So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Codex London Innovation Summit in this, our 10th anniversary year. My name is Rakesh, and I am the CEO of Codex. As you know, this summit is all about reviewing the very latest technologies and their impact on the economy and society. So today we're going to examine the sharing economy, blockchain technologies, VR and AR, robotics, and also how innovation itself is managed in large corporates. But we're going to start this morning by examining the very nature of digital technologies. As you can see, in true Codex style, we have a very distinguished keynote speaker with one of the best job titles I've come across in the last 10 years of doing this job. Dave Coplin is the Chief Envisioning Officer for Microsoft, the Oracle, the modern Oracle at Delphi, if you like. And in this role, his mission is to help us harness the power of digital technologies so we can realize the opportunities they present for us as employees or entrepreneurs or consumers. So let's give a very warm Codex welcome to Dave Coplin, who's going to give us a glimpse of tomorrow's world. Dave.
Thanks, Rakesh. So I feel I better explain the job title, right? So please understand, it's a comedy job title, yeah, right? I work for a company, I work for an industry that loves to talk to you about the technology and the products that we make. We love talking about that stuff. And I decided it was time that somebody started to talk about not the technology, but the human beings that use it. So my job is essentially to project out into the future to try and understand how a human being is going to want to live, work, and play. Because I think if we know what the humans are going to do, we can be a lot more mindful about the kind of technology they're going to require. So understand then, at a certain level, my job is essentially about the future of humanity, right? And I just figured if I'm going to have a job about the future of humanity, I demand a job title with a certain degree of pomposity. I think you'll see I've achieved that. Very proud of that job title. So look, I'm here to talk to you about the incredible world that we find ourselves in and how rapidly technology is changing. The best way I can find to articulate the position that we're in right now is this graph. You will be very familiar with this graph, but this graph is really, really special to me because what it does is it plots the number of mentions of the phrase exponential growth over the last 6 decades, right? We live in incredible times. I come from a world where technology was something special. It was something that you could only ever see at a place of work or a place of study. We now carry around more power in our pockets than used to be on our desks 5 years ago. It supports almost everything we do in our lives. And yet we still feel the need to talk about digital this or IT that. And my request to you today, especially on this day of all days for what you're about to hear, is we have to move on. We have to stop thinking about technology like it's something special because it no longer is. It is part of the fabric of our everyday life. I have 2 proof points which I'd like to make this point. The first is the simple reality of the digital adoption in a modern society, right? So I could put up any one of a million slides that tell you, do you know, in this audience, anyone between the age of 8 and 80 that does not use a computer or a smartphone for work or play? No one. There's one person at the back. Fantastic. So, very small proportion. That's not to say that there aren't people out there who are digitally disengaged, but for the majority of what we're looking at, the people we care about, our customers, our employees, are engaged with digital technology in some shape or form. This is Exhibit A. I'd like to offer you Exhibit B. This is the iPotty. If we live in a world where this is a perfectly feasible product, I'm telling you now, the world of digital is over, right? We're done. You know, now listen, I'm a parent, I've been through potty training, I know that, and there have been times in that process where I would have thought this was a great idea. This, to me, shows me that we are beyond the point where digital is something new. We find ways to bring it into our everyday lives that make difference and meaning. Now, these were both comedy points that I'd like to make. I'd now like to make a serious point about where we are with technology. And that's the fact that we're about to enter the 3rd computer age. Now, I know most people don't care about that. That's something for geeks like me, but it's important, right? The first computer age was really defined, personified, if you like, by Charles Babbage. It was a world of analog computers, mechanical computers. He had an incredible design back in the 19th century that was so complicated it took the Science Museum until 2006 to actually finish making that product. We're more familiar with the 2nd computer age. This is the world we live in today, and this is the world of the microprocessor. It's the thing that powers the phone in your pocket, the computer on your desk. And this technology has revolutionized our world. It's changed the way we communicate, it's changed the way we think about the world, it's changed the way we connect to each other. But there are some fundamental flaws with how we've chosen to use the 2nd computer age. Most of us use this technology, this incredible technology, to replicate ways of working that existed since before the technology was around. Many organizations, I would argue most organizations, structure themselves, both in terms of their organizational structure, but also in the processes that they run, based on those processes that were designed in the 19th century. We still work like we're Victorians today. We just use technology to make those old Victorian working practices a bit quicker or a bit cheaper. This is not the gift of technology. And in fact, working in this way will fundamentally prevent us from getting to the benefit that the new technology is truly going to offer us. And then there's one part of the second computer age that's really important to understand. And I'm going to need a volunteer for this. And I didn't warn Rakesh, but Rakesh, come here, mate. I need you for a second. And it's the basic fundamental fact that the computers we use today are stupid, right? Absolutely stupid. Rakesh, could you humor me? Could you walk out of that door, please? Okay, that's great. Come back in. Thanks, Rakesh. Big round of applause for Rakesh. Yeah, very good. Very good. Now, you see, the brilliant thing about Rakesh is he's a human, right, and not a stupid computer. Take a seat, please, Rakesh. That's great. And even though the door is ambiguous, right, I mean, how the bloody hell do I open this? There's no handles. There's no, do I push it? I don't know. He figured it out, right? What do you think happens if I told a computer to walk through that door? What would a computer do? It would smash the glass. It would walk, because all I've told it to do is to walk through the door. I've not told it that there may be a handle, and if there is a handle, which way it's got to be turned or anything. All of those things require human intuition. So today's computers are stupid unless they've been provided with all of the instructions to a very explicit level. This is the defining moment of the second computer age. But we are in now, and we are going further into the third computer age. This is a world of artificial intelligence and a world of machine learning. These technologies will be as important a shift in how technology affects our society as the advent of the microprocessor, as the advent of the digital computer. And there are a few reasons why this is the case. The first is, in a world of artificial intelligence and machine learning, I no longer instruct computers. I don't program them. I teach them. They learn from me. And when they learn from me, it means I can build incredible services. Here's an example of something that is available today. You can try this at home. It's using the power of artificial intelligence to provide real-time speech-to-speech language translation. Now, at Microsoft, we do it via Skype. It's powered by a search engine, Bing, and basically we demonstrated it 2 years ago. Gentleman speaking German, connected to a lady who speaks English, connected via Skype. Gentleman speaks German, lady hears English. Lady speaks English, gentleman hears German. Real time, right? And the brilliant thing about this example is it's going to change our world, right? I've got a 10-year-old son. On the basis of this technology, do I bother to get my 10-year-old son to learn a foreign language at school? Because it's going to be a redundant skill. By the time he enters his world of work, it will be a redundant skill. No, I get that's provocative. I get there are lots of reasons why we learn foreign languages at school. And of course, my son, he'll learn 1 or 2 languages at school just like everybody else. But as a result of this technology, when he emerges from his education, he will be able to go out into the world, travel the world, communicating with locals as if he were a local, because he'll be able to speak another 152 languages fluently. This is the power of this kind of technology. And to really emphasize this difference between instruction and learning, we can play this ourselves. This comes from some real proper grown-up academic research from Cambridge University at the late 90s it was, that basically shows that if you speak English, as long as I keep the first and last characters of the word in the right place, I can mix up all of the other characters. I can even misspell words, right? But you'll still be able to read the text. Can you read the text? Yeah, of course you can. This is how algorithms work, right? And think about how different this is to the way that we're taught language. Because when we're at school, we're taught language like it follows rules, it follows logic. We're taught things like I before E except after C. But what they don't teach us is that there are 923 exceptions to the I before E. Well, there are more exceptions to the rule than there are to the bloody rule itself. Language isn't logical, it doesn't follow rules, it follows patterns. And we innately know this as human beings because from the day you learn to read until the day you die, you will create, curate, and tend to your own personal pattern of language. Every time you read something, you're making your own personal pattern of language slightly better. It's exactly how artificial intelligence works, exactly how the algorithms work. And the second reason why this is a good example is it shows you the limitation of machine learning, a world of instruction. Because actually, what do you think happens when I show this slide to someone who's just beginning to learn to speak English? If I'd shown it, I don't know, to my son maybe 7 years ago when he was just forming his own language skills. At this point, you haven't established enough of the pattern, so it makes no sense to you. So this whole difference between learning versus instruction is fundamentally different. It means that we train the computers to do what we want them to do, and we have to be careful about how we train them. The second fundamental difference of the third computer age is simply this. The first and second computer ages were about a world of binary, a world of 1 or 0. It was yes or no. This is not where the world of the third computer age is. The world of the third computer age is a world of probability. When you get served an answer by an algorithm, you are giving the most likely answer in the least amount of time. When we give you a link in answer to your query in a search engine, we're not 100% certain. We're saying, do you know what? I think this is what you're looking for. Not dead sure, but let's give it a look, see what happens. Whenever you use an algorithm, you're going through that same probability process. And the challenge there for us humans is we now have to live with a world of ambiguity, a world where it is not yes or no, there are shades of grey, and we have to figure out what do we do with that information, how do we make decisions based on it. But this brings us into a lovely place where the technology can learn from us, can start to do some really interesting things. And this is a lovely example of a project that's now live at the Tate. You can go and see this. It's a physical installation at Tate Britain. You can also try it online. And the Tate have this wonderful competition every year called the IK Prize, where basically they ask the world of technology to do something innovative that will mean something to the world of art, right? You know, typically two worlds that probably are quite opposed. And the winners this year was a small startup in Italy called Fabrica, who used some of Microsoft's, we call it cognitive services, but it's basically artificial intelligence to do something really quite magical with art. So on the left-hand side of the picture, what you can see is actually an image from Reuters news feed. So Reuters is a news agency, has photographers around the world. As they take photographs, you can subscribe to them, you can put them in your press, whatever it may be. And they thought this was a very rich, current feed of information. And what the team did is they took that information and they wanted to match it to the archives in the Tate's gallery. Because if you're someone like the Tate, the biggest problem you've got is not the art that you've got on your walls, it's the art that you have in your archive. The Tate have some 70,000 images in total. They can never display all of those images at once. No single human curator can carry all of those images around in their brains at any one time. So how do we, the art lovers, engage with any of the work that's locked away? So the researchers at this project, what they did is they came up with a way of using artificial intelligence to interpret the photos from Reuters and match that to the images from the Tate's gallery. So we did some basic stuff, right? So there's a whole bunch of metadata that exists for both images. I know where the photo was taken. I know what's in the photo. I know who painted the picture. I know when it was painted. But the real magic happens when we start to use AI to interpret the image itself. So I can look for colors. I can look for the composition of the photo, but best of all, I can look for human traits. I can identify if there's a human being in the picture. I know what age that human being is. I know what gender that human being is. I also know their emotional state, whether they're happy, sad. And I can use that to match the images from the Tate's library, surfacing images to a new audience in a way that would never before be possible. In a sense, we are putting human traits into the machine. Now, the point of this example is not to show you that we're going to replace curators in museums with algorithms, but look at the richer experience we can have as a human. We can discover more as a result of using these human traits to bring the technology to life. But there's a challenge in all of this. The key difference in a world where we learn, we train the algorithms rather than program them, is that over time they become a reflection of us as human beings. Everything we do infers the algorithm. Every ad you see on the internet, you have a small part to play in the placement of that ad. If you use your smartphone and you use the predictive text, the words that you are shown as the prediction for the next word, you have put those words there. By typing the words that you've done in the messages that you've written, you have placed those words there. My son will likely go on to choose his lifelong partner based on the reflection of him and his activities on the internet, the things he may have said, the things he may have done. So we have to understand that as this reflects our society, what do we want that reflection to be? And increasingly, as we're aware of this connection, we have to start thinking very differently about the algorithms. Now, I get this is a bit patronizing, but in a sense, we're all digital parents. We have a responsibility into what these algorithms do for us. And listen, I'm not working for a technology company that wants to lay all of the responsibility with you, the consumers. I obviously have to play my part. But so do you. We have to think about this in responsible terms. We have to think about other challenges that the algorithms have. Because the algorithms are put together by human beings, and therefore they are inherently flawed, because we are inherently flawed as human beings. One of the things that's emerging in a world of algorithmic calculation is that the patterns that we create, well, they take on all of the biases of the people that create the patterns. And this is quite a complex topic, but I've got a really stupid, trivial example to kind of make the point. Now, do we have any tea lovers in the room? Okay, so I represent a certain stereotype of middle-class white Englishmen who quite likes tea, right? And if there was to be an algorithm to make tea, I'd quite like to know who'd written that algorithm. If I could give you two extreme examples. If someone like me writes the algorithm for making tea, then there's a pot and it's warmed, right? And there's tea bags in the pot that get scorched with boiling water. The tea steeps for 3 or 4 minutes, which then poured into a warm mug with a splash of milk. That's my algorithm for making tea. I'm also Canadian. The Canadian side of me is a completely different algorithm for making tea. As a North American, the algorithm for making tea is basically there's a cup with lukewarm water and the tea bag and the milk, there's your cup of tea, right? Not on my bloody watch, do you know what I'm saying, right? Stupid, trivial example, but increasingly when we rely more and more on these algorithms, do you not think that we need to know more and more about the people who create them? This is this whole issue, and I get this a slight sense of irony here, about diversity. Diversity is absolutely imperative to us going forward if we're going to get the algorithms to be reflective of the kind of society we want, to deliver the answers that we want. Now, in terms of the answers themselves, they too are problematic, because just because an algorithm says something, does it make it true? And we live in a world where this is increasingly challenging. We're a world where the algorithms infer connections. As a search industry, we've been through challenges. I think search is one of those things that really is at the intersection of modern society and technology. We had a challenge as an industry, it was about a couple of years ago, because you know how the auto-suggest works on most search engines. It's basically based on the characters that you've just typed in and against the billions of other queries that you've typed in. I'll look, and the statistical probability of you going on to complete the sentence based on those queries is this, so I'm going to suggest that as the answer. And we all collectively found we had a problem one morning when somebody types in, how do I join? And the suggestions are ISIS, right? Now, is that a problem, right? We don't know. Right? This is what the algorithms have done. The algorithms are reflecting society. We haven't just woken up one morning and said, I know, let's put ISIS there. You know, lots and lots of other people must have been typing that in. Now, as a society, what do we do about that? Is it legal for us to serve that as a search industry? Well, actually, it is legal. Is it right? I don't know. So we have to have a debate about what do we do with this stuff? When the algorithms reflect our society in a way that is uncomfortable for us or promotes new problems to us, how do we respond? And the way we respond is we all have to work together. We, the technology industry, have to work with you, consumers, and your businesses. We have to work with the government and to figure out in this new digital century, what is the right answer for this stuff? How do we deal with that? But fundamentally, the point that we must come back to is that unlike how the media would love us to believe that this is not some big adversarial battle. This is not the Terminator, right? And the challenge I have is every time we talk about, and you're going to talk about them today, right? We're going to talk about robotics, we're going to talk about AI. When I say talk about robots, I guarantee you at least one of you has an image of Arnie and his titanium robot army in your head, right? If I talk about artificial intelligence, some of you will be thinking about Stanley Kubrick in 2001: A Space. I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that, right? These are not good images, right? These are not the role models that we need. Because where we're going in the future is not a world of humans versus machines, but a world of humans plus machines. I want technology to extend my reach as a human being, to allow me to do more than I could do on my own. Think back to my example with my son and language translation. So we've got to break this rhetoric, right? End this stupid, bloody rhetoric, and instead focus on what is it we can do together. You want to be successful in the future? Well, actually, you want your kids to be successful if you choose to have them? Figure out how you can have a really good relationship with technology, how you can use technology to do the stuff that you find hard and leave you free to do the stuff that only you can do. Because where we want to be is a world that delivers human outcomes, a world that actually is reflective of what humans actually want. And we have some ways to go, but we're getting close. Let me give you an example of something that probably will affect all of you. This is my son, actually. We're on a place called, we're in Long Beach on the west coast of Vancouver Island. It was taken in April. And in order to get my family to Vancouver Island, I had to jump through a whole bunch of technological hoops, right? I was treated by the system as just another component of the machine because I did the thing that we all do, right? So we want to go on holiday. So when you want to go on holiday, what do? Well, you spend an evening in front of some search engine looking for destinations, right? So now I know we're going to go to Vancouver. Brilliant. How are we going to get there? Well, there's another evening you're going to spend on airline websites, Skyscanner, all that sort of stuff. So now I know where I'm going to go, how I'm going to get there, where are we going to stay. There's another evening you're going to spend on Expedia, hotel websites. Now I know where I'm going to go, how I'm going to get there, where I'm going to stay. What are we going to do? I don't know. There's another evening I'm going to spend on destination websites. Every one of those is a technical hoop. As a human being, all I want to do, I want to take my family to Vancouver. That's all I want to do. Why can't you sort that out for me? I want to be able to say to the system, I'd quite like to go to Vancouver in April, please. I'd like to take the family. And the system knows who I am. knows who my family is, knows where Vancouver is, knows the airlines I like to fly, the hotels I like to stay in, the things I like to do, and on my behalf has a discussion with all of those service providers and gives me back not just a bunch of links, but an itinerary, a human outcome, the thing I'm looking for. This is the world that we're heading into.
Will it get you a discount?
Well, yeah, it should do, because it's a competitive marketplace, right?
Indian style.
Indian style, maybe. But the best thing about this, right? So I talk about the technology all the time, but the lovely thing about this is human nature. And we humans, we evolve, we change our expectations. And when we have good experiences, our expectations rise. It happens to us all the time, but I think we as a society, we're going through one specific change at the moment. And it's the change in how you respond to this scenario, right? Somebody at the checkout holding that cash, the pin machine in front of you. Because I would bet your behavior has changed probably in the last 6 months, certainly in the last 12 months. Because 12 months ago, I would approach this situation and I would get my card out and I would stuff it in and I would type in 4 digits, right? What happens now? Right? I walk up, I've even got a little flourish now. I'm there and I'm like, bing, thank you very much. Your reaction to the other scenario, which is as you're doing that and you've got your little flourish and the lady or gentleman says, I'm sorry, we don't do contactless. Your reaction at that moment in time is reflective on how engaged you are digitally. Because if you say, well, that's no problem, so I put it in, I bet you don't do that. I bet you're much more like me, which is, what? You're joking. Oh, come on. This is the 21st. I've got to type in 4 digits now. Madness, right? Or maybe some of you are thinking like 30 quid. 30 quid's not enough, right? You know, I want more. Because look at what's happened. This service has come. This stuff was pushed out in 2008. It's been around for years. But only now have we got to a point where it's consistent and I can use it and the experience is good. And I only do that a few times, and then everywhere I go, I expect that same kind of service. I expect that same level of quality. This is brilliant, right? If you're a technologist like me, it's great because it means all I have to do is deliver value to you, and you'll come back and you'll want more. And it's kind of like one of these bizarre desk toys that your dad used to have, or your weird uncle, right? And it's just basically, as a technology industry or as organizations, what you've got to do is deliver value to the people you care about. Sometimes you have to give them a gentle nudge, right? To say, look at what you could do differently. Do you remember the first time that you used contactless? Right? It was really weird. I was like, there, I don't know, where do I put it there or there? And do I have to hold it for the date? It's like my first kiss. It was awkward and horrible, you know, right? Now we live in a world that's just normal because somebody had to push me to go there. You have to give your customers this gentle nudge, right, to show them this is possible. If you get it right, if you deliver value, guess what happens? They come back. Right? They say, we want more. We want to see it more. But you have to deliver value. Let me see if I can find it. No, it's not there. It was here earlier on. I tell you, I've got too many phones in my pocket now. I want to give you an example of an industry that has yet to discover value. Anybody know what that is? Right? Yeah, okay. It's not just a train ticket. It's my train ticket. And because I am, willing to put myself at risk for all of you, I went through a little experiment last night. And I thought, I want to be a digital citizen, right? I'm going to engage with my train company digitally. Oh, yeah. And so last night I'm sat at home and I'm thinking, do you know what? I'm going to buy my ticket and I'm going to turn up at the station tomorrow and I'm going to be slick and efficient, like I never am. So I'm sitting in front of the telly. I do what we all do. I grab the nearest digital device on the coffee table. It's my phone. There's even an app for my train company. Fantastic. I'm there. I say I want to go from Banbury to London. This is where I live. 7 options. All different prices, all different rules. Oh, shit. That looks okay. I'll take that one. Right, brilliant. Put my credit card details in. I've got my train ticket. Right, I'm feeling pretty good. So I turn up at the station this morning. It's very early. I'm there. I'm at the station. I've got my laptop bag. I've got my coffee, my bacon sandwich. Find the ticket machine. Fantastic. Ticket machine's there. Type in, use your credit card that you paid for last night. Brilliant. Got that. Put that in. Enter your 6-digit code. 6-digit code. Oh, shit. Oh, it's on my phone. Right, so I'm there like some cack-handed juggler trying to get this thing in. Eventually, I get my ticket. That's the digital journey for buying a train ticket. Meanwhile, there's a lovely lady in the corner of the ticket hall. Right, all I have to do is I have to walk up to her and say, excuse me, I'd quite like to go to London. Now, what's the best ticket for me? Oh, it's this one. Thanks very much. Here's my card. Once, I take my ticket and I walk off. If you're delivering digital solutions to your customers like that, don't be surprised if they never, ever come back. Right? If you're not delivering value, you're not doing the right things. You're not in the right place. So what can you do with as an organization to make this happen? Right? So number one, if you want to live in the digital world, you have to be in the digital world. You have to digitize your business. That means you have to be in the cloud. And I get that I work for a company that sells cloud solutions. I get that, right? But you cannot do this stuff if you are not connected in some way. Equally, the fuel of your future is the data that you generate, the things that you do. And if that data is inaccessible, you cut yourself off from your supply. You cut yourself off from the fuel. Because we live in a world that's brilliant, right? We live in a world where the data is becoming more and more accessible. And better, the data that's always been around us is getting increasingly easy to see and use. Does anybody know what this is? It's Fitbit data. It's a very special kind of fitness data. It's actually the fitness data for my dog. Right, I know what you're thinking, right? He's a certain type of individual, far too much time on his hands and probably not that many friends, right? But this is a very special dog to me because she's called Meg, and we adopted her and her sister. We rescued her and her sister 4 months ago. And she is your typical collie. She's a little bit skitty. She doesn't like to run around. She wants to stay right by your side, possibly thinking I'm a sheep. I don't know. And what I can do is I can use that data to monitor her health. Now, Meg always had health data. It's a bit like you guys. If any of you have got these personal devices, I have one, it tells me my heart rate, right? Well, the thing is about my heart rate, I've pretty much more or less, give or take, I've always had a heart rate. Right? It's always been there. It's just that the technology enables me to see it. I can use that data. I can correlate spikes in my stress levels with my activities every time I meet with my boss. My stress goes through the roof. What's that about, right? This stuff is out there. The same is true for every facet of your organization. Every communication that you have, every product, every service, every conversation with a customer is a piece of data that you can use if you choose to light it up. But that means that you've got to get good at data. You're going to need data scientists, but you yourselves are going to have to be good at data because the tools that light up the value of the data you have access to are getting easier and easier to use. It's a bit like Microsoft Excel. If you remember Microsoft Excel about 15 years ago, when you wanted to write a formula in Microsoft Excel, you typically needed 7 manuals, a PhD, and about 2 weeks of spare time. And if you were lucky, if you were really lucky, you would get the syntax right and the formula would work. What happens today? I click on a button in the ribbon, and it auto-senses the data, and it gives me the formula that I need, right? I just need to know the answer that the question that I'm trying to ask, everything else. The same is true for all sorts of things, all the big data that your organizations are going to run on. The tools are becoming increasingly available. But if you're not asking the right questions, you're never going to get the value. And then there's this lovely thing about who we are as organizations, what we do as industries, and it's this thing about purpose. And purpose is very different to your mission statement. We all have a mission statement, and mission statements typically are love letters that you write to yourselves, right? This is how much I love me and what we do. A purpose is very different, right? Because your purpose is what you mean to your customers. What do you enable your customers to do? When you understand what that purpose is, it becomes the focal point for every part of your own digital journey. It becomes the bellwether that you can use, the yardstick, to measure whether you're delivering value against that. So if you don't know what your purpose is today, you need to spend some time to discover what that might be. And one of the best things you can do to discover your purpose is to think about the outcome of what you do rather than the process of what you do. It's a really, really important distinction because the process is the stuff that you've always done. It's that Victorian thing that you've always had. The outcome is very different. It's the difference between efficiency and effectiveness. And it reminds me, I was just walking here this morning. I was coming through the Barbican. There's all the construction work there. It was very early on in London. And I come across this bloke, right? And he's working on a building site. He's got a hard hat, high-vis jacket, and he's putting little white dollops of powder down the center of the road. I'm a curious guy, right? I'm like, what is that for? And he's like, I'm putting down elephant powder. I'm like, elephant powder? What's that for? It keeps the elephants away. But there aren't any elephants in the Barbican. It's like, no, it's good stuff, isn't it? Right? I'm here all week. Right? The point is, your organizations, they're full of elephant powder. Stuff you do that is pointless, redundant, irrelevant in a modern digital age. If you want to be successful, you've got to rip that stuff out. You've got to find it. You've got to pull it out. You've got to tear it out. You've got to burn it. It's the stuff that's holding you back. It's the processes that you do because you've always done it that way. It's the stuff that prevents you from ever realizing the full potential of what technology, the third computer age, is going to deliver to you. But in order to get there, you've got to start thinking very differently about the future. We as humans, we struggle to think about the future. The best thing we can do as humans to think about the future is we think the future is a straight line. And it's always a straight line extrapolated from where we are today, from where you were yesterday. And it's always up and to the right. Well, the thing is about the future in a digital society is it's never a straight line and it's never up and to the right. It bounces around like a pinball. And your ability to be successful hinges on your ability to anticipate the ricochets of that ball as it bounces around. Let me give you an example of an industry I don't think is thinking the right way about the future. Does anybody know what this is? This is one of the first autonomous vehicles that have been approved for use on UK highways, right? And I love this thing, right? Because on the one hand, it represents this incredible feat of technology and engineering. To think that we live in a world where this could be possible, it's just wonderful. But then you start to look at the numbers, right? And the numbers are brilliant. Because if you look at the numbers will show you that it won't be until 2040 that 50% of all miles driven are driven autonomously. That number doesn't reach 100% until the time we reach to 2070. Do you seriously want to tell me by the time we reach 2070, we will still think that the best way to transport human beings around the local environment is inside a tin robotic box on wheels? That cannot be the case. If Amazon is preparing, if Domino's is preparing to deliver pizzas to my house using an autonomous drone, then surely the future of transportation of human beings is as likely to be an autonomous drone as it is an autonomous vehicle. But the automotive industry cannot see that because it's locked into this thinking of the future being a straight line. Then thinking about the regulators. What do the regulators do with stuff like this? Right? On a good day, the regulators regulate for today's world. Typically, they regulate for yesterday's world. Do you know what the first law that the UK passed for the provision of autonomous vehicles on UK highways is? Is that there must be, at all times, a human being inside the vehicle. I don't know, let's call them the driver, right? Whose job it is to monitor the control. This is the madness of that kind of thinking. But the real challenge of this thinking is neither of those two things. It's simply this. It's the opportunity cost of that thinking. Because for every second that an automotive engineer thinks this is the future of transportation, nobody's building one of these. Shit, nobody's building. This is the human outcome we actually want, right? Nobody's making this. So if you want to be successful in the future, the thing you've got to do is you've got to get outside of your industry, you've got to get outside of your organization, and you've got to start connecting the dots. You've got to look at how all of these things may come together and affect the people you care about, your employees and your customers. And then we've got to prepare for the future. And how do we prepare for the future? Well, we've got to think about education. We've got to think about what we choose to teach people about where technology is going to go. And I think we have to change from where we're at. I think we have to move to a world where we teach skills rather than tools. And what I mean by that is if I just think back to my own family history, so my grandparents, they went to school in the northwest of England at a time where there was no electricity. They had no electricity in their school. My dad went to school in the West Midlands, and there was no computers at his school. This was the computer I had at my school. I went to school in the East Midlands, and there was no internet, there was no World Wide Web, there was nothing. But it keeps going on and on, because the last generation always has the last laugh. My son's going to school in a world where there are no hover cars, right? So the thing is, what do you think would happen if all we did was teach kids about the tools that are available today? How is that preparing a future workforce? Because those tools are going to change. So instead, we've got to teach them some basic skills. We've got to teach them some really important things. Number one is how do they keep themselves safe? And this whole concept of safeguarding is absolutely crucial to enable kids to get the best, the most out of what technology has to offer their lives. We also have to teach people to behave responsibly. There's something weird about human beings. When they start interacting online, they think they can do things that would not normally be socially acceptable. I'm pleased to see that we're making some good progress in these areas. But we've also got to help wake up humans, right? We've got to wake up humans to the fact that they're the people pressing the buttons. If you're worried about your kids spending too much time in front of a screen, think about how much time you spend in front of a screen. I caught myself the other week. I hate myself for this. I was giving my son a good telling off. I said, "You're always in front of a bloody screen. Let me just finish this. Hang on. What we do this. They look at us. They see how we live our lives. And we don't make good choices as adults, right? We drift into one digital experience after another without thinking about how is this stuff actually adding value to our lives. There's a simple life skill that we all need, and it's simply this. We must at all times, be able to make a decision about what I'm about to do right now. Can technology help me, yes or no? We need kids to do this, and we all need to do this as adults. Because if it can't help you, turn it off. Put it down. If you sit in a meeting with people who like to open their laptops taking notes, right? Or you sit in a meeting taking notes, and we all know that taking notes on your laptop basically means checking out Facebook or catching up on your email. Don't have the meeting. The meeting is a pointless waste of everybody's time. We need to teach kids these skills, right? They've got to understand what they need to do. We need to teach people about critical thinking. My son came home last night and he said, "Dad, you cannot trust Wikipedia." Why? Because that's what my teacher told me. Oh, hang on a minute, right? We've got to teach them critical thinking. Do you know what? You can't trust Wikipedia, but equally, you can't trust your teacher either, right? Where is the evidence that your teacher used to give you that statement? I don't know, I didn't ask. Right, go back and ask, find out. That is critical thinking. These are the skills that we're going to need. We need people to be curious. Oh God, we need people to be curious. In a world where Facebook will hand your opinion to you, right? We want people to think for themselves, to think, well, why is that the case? Why does that happen? What could we do about it differently? And we need, most of all, we need kids to dream big. Kids are going to inherit a most complicated, dangerous, optimistically wonderful world. But they need to think very differently. If they're going to harness the potential there, they've got to think very differently to the way that we thought. And just as we had to think different to our parents and so on before. But I actually think it comes down to this. I think it comes down to the one place where technology cannot, and for the foreseeable future, will not be able to replace humanity. And that's in creativity. You can create all of the algorithms in the world. We can make algorithms that can beat human beings at chess, paint Rembrandt. They cannot in themselves be creative. They can only be creative in the context of a pattern they've always been provided with. And where we're going with technology is not a world of computer science. It's a world of true creativity. And I want to give you a couple of examples. This is actually my son's homework from last term. He got asked to make a board game about the Egyptians. Proudest moment of my life, because what he chose to do is, I'm not going to make a dice, Dad. I want to do something different. So it's an Egyptian game, so he made a pyramid. But brilliantly, what he stuck on the front of the pyramid was a BBC microbit. I don't know if you've come across these. These are these Moorish, engaging, beautiful little computers that the BBC have put out, just like they did the BBC Micro back in 1981. And what he did with his little microbit is he coded it so that when you shake the pyramid, it generates a random number between 1 and 6. He's making a game. He's not programming a computer. It's a really important distinction. He had the thought to do that. And I get he's my son, so he's a bit of a geek, right? But all of our kids should be doing this. We've got incredible initiatives going on right now. I don't know, some of you may have seen this if you've got kids at school, but this is an initiative done by the Bloodhound team. The Bloodhound are the team who are going to break the world land speed record. They have a schools initiative called the Great Rocket Car Challenge. And what they're asking schools to do is to make a rocket car that will go as fast as possible. And it's a real rocket car. It's a foam block that they have to carve and shave. In the back of the car, there is a hole for a real, live, exploding, fiery rocket to go. And in the guts of the car, we put a microbit. And the microbit takes the accelerometer data, so I know how fast the car's going. I know how noisy, how chatty the car is. And then I can use that data to refine my design. So we're teaching the kids about engineering and physics and maths and computer science, but the kids don't think they're learning that stuff. The kids are building a bloody rocket car, right? That's the point. Because we've got focused on creativity, on the outcome of what they can do. The byproduct of that is they're going to inherit all of these skills. So if we want to prepare our kids for the future, if we want to prepare our society for the future, let's focus on the application of what this stuff does rather than the stuff itself. So this is not to say that computer science isn't important, but it's an end to a means. Creativity is everything that we need. So I want to leave you with a couple of things. The first is, if we're going to get this right, we have to put technology in the right place, and technology, I think, is the least of all of our problems. And I can think of no better way of describing it than to call on a quote from Pablo Picasso, of all people, who in the mid-60s in Paris, he's being interviewed by some art magazine, and they ask him this brilliant question. And why you would ask Pablo Picasso, I don't know, right? But they say, hey, Pablo, what do you think about computers? And even though computers in the mid-60s in Paris are completely different to the computers you have in your pocket or on your desk, his answer was genius, because he simply said, computers are useless. All they can give me are answers. What I need is something that can ask the right questions. And ladies and gentlemen, that's something. It's you. That's your job. That's what you have to do. You have to figure out, what is the question that we're actually trying to answer here? That's what you've got to help your kids do, if you choose to have them. Is, what is it that we're trying to solve? When you know what the question is, when you're really crisp on what the question is, we all know the technology will make short work of providing the answer, but we have to start with the right question. So to bring this to an end, please understand, this is not my view of the future. This is not the Terminator. The internet, believe it or not, is not Skynet. I have a very simple, more optimistic view of the future, and it's just this. I want a world where we as human beings, we stand tall, high and proud, right up on the shoulders of these digital giants that we've created. We use technology to extend our reach, not to replace us. And what I love about this debate, it's a debate we've been having for years. I remember when I was a kid and I was doing my maths exam, and I was doing my maths O-level. And if you don't know what an O-level is, it's kind of like a GCSE, but harder, right? It was a point in our society where we were debating the role of pocket calculators in the education of our children, right? As a result of that societal debate, I did my maths O-level with a bloody logbook and a slide rule. Now, I'm a better mathematician with a calculator than I am with a tabulated bit of paper and a slidey bit of plastic. Yes, I need to know the basics of arithmetic, but once I do, the technology fundamentally lifts my capability. It's exactly the same principle today. So what we have to do is we have to prepare our society not by teaching them about the tools. This is not about whether people can use Word or PowerPoint or even specific coding languages. This is about whether they can use those other things, deep thinking, critical thinking, creative thinking. If we can make sure that every member of our society has access to these skills, then and only then can we as humans rise up and live up to all of the potential that technology has to offer us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.